So
Just
yes, no, you have some magnificent scars. That's, I think I mentioned, that's how I acquired the vast majority of miniatures that I've got. Was a friend. I had to go under the knife. He had
yeah,
to have bypass
right.
and needed some cash, and I was able to help him out.
There you go. Well, this is, yeah, as I said earlier, I didn't need any of the cash, but let me tell you, when somebody hands you a taped up towel and says, "Hug this to cough or sneeze," you know you're in for an interesting ride.
Oh God, yeah, that's
And it was morning, folks. We're talking open heart surgery on the painting with miniatures. I'm joined by Ross. Um, yeah,
and
it was literally 4 weeks before I could sneeze without cuddling that rolled up towel.
I've had to go in to the hospital for overnight stays twice.
Mm-hmm.
Once when I broke my ankle and tore all the ligaments on the instep of my right foot.
Ouch.
Um, and it's one of these things. I broke it in a pickup football game, soccer
Yeah.
game. Uh, Friend's brother, older brother, was a doctor. He said, "Oh, it's just a bad sprain." That night, when I tried to roll over, my foot sort of flopped,
Uh oh.
and excruciating pain as things sort of graded.
Yeah.
So I had to stay overnight in the hospital while the swelling went down, so they could make sure they set it properly.
Yeah.
And so that was one. Um, First one was in our very first offices for FASA on Cermak Road, not 2200, but this was 800 Hillstead. You know, our first offices were about 4 blocks away from our ultimate offices,
Right.
with 15 years in between.
Yeah.
Um, and I was leaving with a friend at the end of the day. We were lowering the mechanical doors, and the warehouse cat decides to come out, gets caught under the door. I went to lift up the door right next to the cat, and the cat latched onto my hand.
Oh no.
And the cat's panicked and going berserk,
Yeah.
chewing on my hand. Finally, get the cat free. Hand is all bloody. Puncture marks where the cat's teeth went in.
Yeah.
I walk around the building, around basically a half block, in through the front door up to the second or third floor, wherever our offices were. Was on the phone with my dad saying, "Yeah, I think I need to go to the hospital on this one."
Right.
My hand is all puffed up, and while I'm talking to my father, I pass out,
Wow.
fall forward, hit my chin on the steel deck plates, shatter 2 teeth. Um, I come to while my dad is driving me to the hospital, and I'm in for a couple of nights as they feed me antibiotics because of the cat bite,
Yeah.
wait for the swelling to go down, get the emergency dental work. Um, and I have to this day, an inch-long scar under my chin where I hit, as well as the dental work. So,
Wow.
yeah, it makes a great story. Everybody loves to hear it, but it wasn't that fun to live through.
No. That would have been. Yeah, exciting's completely the wrong word, but yes, like I'm, I'm, I'm putting myself in the shoes of your dad at this point.
Well, we're fairly unflappable types, but yeah, no, I imagine hearing your child not, you know, stop talking in the middle, hear a crash,
Yeah,
and get no answer.
yeah, that
Luckily, by this time, my friend had followed me around, uh, and was able to pick up the phone. I have been told,
you're right.
and
But they still both had to pick you up.
well, I think I don't know how long I was out. I
Yeah.
just the last thing I remember was, being in the car, bloody shirt,
Yeah.
hand, elevated above the heart, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think they had to lift me, but I'm sure they were on each side of me
Yeah.
to
Right. Yeah.
guide me to the
Wrangle
waiting
you,
vehicle.
wrangle you into the car.
Yep.
Yeah, that would have been stressful.
Yep.
I was going to
Yep.
use the word entertaining, but perhaps people don't get the dry sense of humour. It's uh, yeah, alarming stuff.
Yeah, but at least it was an injury, a specific event, not like
Oh, the
your heart
the
surgery
hard
story.
stuff. I just started a new
It's
job.
right. Well, it's just you're being led bewilderedly from one station to the next
Next thing,
as care escalates.
yeah, I, I, I just started a new job. I was 5 weeks into a new job, and I was walking up to the local supermarket to get myself some supplies for, I can't remember if it was just for lunch or just, snacks or whatever. And this burning sensation under my chin, and I'm like, wow, that's not good. I wonder what that means. And yeah, around the visits to doctors and everything like that, they give you these tablets, and what these tablets do is that they're blood vessel dilators. So they
Hmm.
obviously, the angina is a constriction in the arteries to the heart, and so that burning sensation is because your heart's not getting enough oxygen, and it's a referred pain. Like, you don't feel it in your heart, you feel it somewhere else. And in this case, it was radiating up under my chin. But they give you these blood vessel dilators, and the first thing you end up with is this monster headache because all of a sudden you've got too much blood in your skull.
Right, your supercharger's on all of a sudden.
Yeah, and so you go from pain under the chin to pain everywhere in your head, and there are a number of things that were not very funny at the time that are quite funny now. My partner's father, her parents came in to visit me a couple of times, and unbeknownst to us at the time, he was also having heart issues from the perspective of that he was ending up with really low blood pressure from time to time, just episodes.
Hmm.
And I was stuck in the surgical hospital for, I think it was 2 weeks before I actually got the surgery, and I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. I wasn't allowed to go home. I was stuck on a heart monitor the entire time. I wasn't even allowed off the ward. I could go for walks around the ward, but I had to stay within sort of shouting distance of the nurse's station in case something went wrong. So I was feeling a little bit sort of trapped, and anyhow, they'd come in to visit, and they were just on the edge of leaving, and he had one of these episodes, and he fainted, like literally. He was mid-sentence and stopped talking and went blank, and his eyes rolled up, and I grabbed him because he was about to fall forward onto my hospital bed, and I grabbed him and held him up while Joe's mum grabbed a chair and shoved the chair under the back of his knees, and we got him to collapse into the chair so that he was sitting, and hailed a passing nurse, and she took one look at him and just called it code blue. And the next thing I know, I'm evicted from my own bed. I'm out across the other side of the hallway while there's 15 people cramming into this cubicle in this ward dealing with Joe's dad. And I got transferred later that evening because they took him down to emergency. I got transferred later that evening into the pre-op ward and he ended up in my ward bed for an overnight stay.
Well, if you're going to have an episode, there's no better place than...
Absolutely, he was in absolutely the right place at absolutely the right time to get absolutely the right care. But it was just like, never let him forget the fact that he stole my ward bed. So there was a nurse coming around to do rounds, and she was coming around to me. I can't remember if it was bloods or whatever it was, but she's standing at the end of my cubicle, flabbergasted, because there's 15 people around and absolutely no sign of me whatsoever. Where's my patient? Yeah, I'm over here.
You had been shooed out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was pretty unceremonious, I have to say. When as we said earlier in the conversation, when it's all about the heart stuff, there's no mucking about. That they're really deadly serious. Nobody takes any kind of chances. But, yeah, and so he managed to get his medication sorted out, so he hasn't had that kind of stuff since. But yeah, it wasn't funny at the time because we were worried about whether he was going to pull through that particular episode or not, but he came out of it with his sense of humour intact, so we laugh about it now.
Well, and you've got something on him too, so yeah, I'm sure you never let him forget.
Yeah, absolutely not, because I don't know, her whole family's a bunch of practical jokers. They don't.
Well, then you've got some ammunition.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a good sort, actually.
So I finally turned on the Twitch feed. What are you working on today, by the way?
So I rather think this is a troll. Arm in the camera. So no, this would be an ogre. These are the trolls. So an armored ogre.
Has Paul made his request to you to potentially paint some dwarfs for him?
No, he has not.
Well, there'll probably be some in the next package to you, whenever that may turn out.
Right.
On circumstances.
There's supposed to be some goblins in there.
No, Royal Parts of Europe is on the verge of launching their next Kickstarter.
Right, okay.
Another round of various dwarves.
Oh, cool.
Perhaps one of the few things. These are, 28 mil.
Oh.
Versions. And he's always on the lookout for folks to paint some up so we can feature them during the campaign.
There you go. Send away, Paul. Very happy to paint dwarves in any scale, except possibly 6mm. That'd be ridiculous. No. I like, as I said to you a couple of days ago, I only got the one email from Paul.
Well, and yeah, as I said, he's catching up from his COVID bout, which put him out for almost 2 full weeks.
Yeah.
So it's not anything to fool around with or joke about.
Oh no. Well, given the death rate, it's not a funny thing at all. And our state's just broken the record for the most number of cases in a single day in a state in Australia. So my partner and I are just looking at each other going, how on earth, given how many times we've been through this, that this particular state can get it so wrong so often.
You probably need to shift your camera angle a little. Your main display area is is not showing the work.
Right.
The
So,
overhead, I guess. Or move, your hands forward about 4 inches.
so wait for the video to catch up.
Welcome to Bixby.
Yeah, I think
You
I
can
just
talk to me anytime by saying hi, Bixby.
My camera's just decided that it wants to play Bixby. Is that? Can you see it now?
Better. That's better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful. That's the kind of feedback I need. So yeah, no,
The feedback I would have given you 20 minutes ago, but
you were too busy
didn't want
listening.
to interrupt you, gentlemen.
Good morning, Matt.
Good
How are
morning,
ya?
good afternoon, Ross. I'm well, thank you. Yes, your conversation didn't warrant the injection of my brand of humour.
Yes, we regale who's had the more serious medical episode. I think Dan wins.
Yeah, and that's not a competition I ever wanted to win ever in my life. I would quite happily have stayed out of hospitals and never visited one ever, but there you go. So when were you talking to him, Paul, about dwarves, and was that the Monday conversation?
That was Monday, part of Monday.
Yeah.
Or sometime within the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, he was buried under 3 months' paperwork, so.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I still don't have any notification that they've sent anything, so I still don't think they've sent it.
Well, I'm scheduled to speak with him again on Wednesday.
Yeah. Like we said, there's no tearing hurry. And unless, of course, he wants those dwarves done in time for Kickstarter, in which case, be better get them to me. When's that?
We may. That's a good question. It just depends on how the flow goes. Again, because Martin's going to be out for most of next week.
Yeah. But that's only a week, isn't it? It's not. Hopefully, not any longer than that.
Yeah, it's just a family COVID lockdown so that his wife can go in and have her procedure.
Mm-hmm. Which actually circles us all the way back around to the start of the original conversation. And these paints are awesome, Ross. They're really, really good.
So what is the difference? What differentiates these from the paints that Partha supplies from the others that you've been used to using?
I think, like if I was to compare them to the Army Painter, which is the stuff that I use most, they're less gel-like. They have a smoother consistency. Let me see if I can.
So it flows. They flow onto the model a little bit better. Is that
Yeah. Without the need for thinning as you go. So let's see if you guys can see this. So the Partha one is here on the left. So if I drag that and pull it out, you can see what it does. And if I grab the Army Painter one and do exactly the same thing, you can see it's a gel.
Right, it's got some thickness to it, so it doesn't spread out.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're about the same sort of grind, the same sort of granularity in the particle in the paint. It's just that the Army Painter in the bottle is more of a gel. You must be able to see that sitting on the end of the brush like that. It's a blob. Yeah. So it doesn't. You still get a blob, but it's a far smoother thing. So they're just straight out of the bottle. They flow better. Obviously, if you're doing different techniques and different bits and pieces with them, you need thinning and all that kind of stuff anyway. But as a ready-to-use paint, they're better than the Army Painter. They go on to the models really, really nicely. Oh, helps to look at what you're doing. Now, I really like the Army Painter stuff. I really, really do. It's my go-to. But these, the Partha paints, it's just that little bit superior from the perspective of somebody that doesn't know what they're doing with the paint is going to get a better result with them. So,
have you gotten the full set yet, or you're
no,
still...
no, I'm still waiting.
Okay.
Paul said something about them not having the full set at this point in time.
Entirely possible, especially with just all of the disruptions that have been going on lately.
Yeah.
I know that when a color is being poured, they will get their stock refilled.
Right.
But with, 72 or plus colors, not every color is poured every day.
No. I think I've got 20. So.
A ways to go, yeah.
Yeah. But he did send me a good selection of colours. I mean, I've got some very usable paints here. The leather is an excellent colour. I love this red. Even if I'm not doing a very good job of it at this point in time.
Well, and I know you made the point that as somebody who paints armies, paints units,
Yeah.
paints several units of the same flavor, you want to be able to have the same color each time you come back to that specific unit.
That's right. And lots and lots of people mix paints, and that's great. But when you are painting armies, getting that same colour again and again and again when you're doing a mix, you've just added a level of complexity that I don't personally want to have to deal with. Oh, and you know how we were talking about cats before? Well, you were relaying stories about cats. So yeah. Has the weather turned there yet? Is it raining?
It was raining earlier in the week. It'll rain again on Sunday. So yes, the weather is turned. We're just waiting for the leaves to turn now.
Right.
It started, but went out for a walk this morning. It was very, very crisp fall day.
What's crisp now? You down in the 20s or the teens?
Let's make it. Yeah, we're certainly in the teens, maybe mid 15, 16.
Yeah, okay.
Gets down to close to 10 at night.
I'd call that cold.
No, that's good sleeping weather. Windows are still open.
They would be here too, but I'd be under 6 doing us. I sleep most nights. I sleep under a weighted blanket. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter has one.
Yeah. 10 kilograms of glass beads.
We have a surplus of quilts in the house,
Mm-hmm.
because that is one of the family businesses.
Right.
So it's very easy to add one, peel one off as needed.
Yeah. Is that one of those machines that I've seen in the background of the videos?
Yes,
Big.
that is what's called a long arm machine that does the second to last step. Takes your top that has been painstakingly pieced together,
Mm-hmm.
the batting in the middle and the back, makes them one.
Right. Because my mother does quilts, but she does them by hand. By hand, I mean she has a normal domestic sewing machine.
Well, we have, basically a wife's business is we'll take anybody's 3 pieces and put them together for them for the 1.5 cents a square inch.
There you go. If only I wasn't so far away. Can't imagine that would be economical to ship that all the way over there, get that done, and ship it back again.
Not given shipping rates these days. That's
Nope.
For sure.
It's going to be cheaper at some point to hire a Learjet.
Well, my youngest daughter's freshman year college roommate was related to one of the DHL founders.
Yeah, right.
And DHL started by, there's lots of traffic, shipping traffic between west coast of California, west coast of the U.S., California, and Hawaii.
Right.
And, it always helps to have the shipping manifest arrive at the location before the ship does, so that the paperwork can be done, the cargo can be offloaded, and everybody knows where it's supposed to go. And
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So this guy, I guess he was in college, and his group started hiring people, buying them plane tickets, and filling their luggage with the paperwork for trips,
Right.
freighter trips.
Yeah.
And that essentially turned into DHL. That's how it started.
Wow.
And
Now it's a massive business.
well, and it's probably not going to be a Learjet, but it'll be some other form of transportation that's faster than what's currently available to figure out a way to get those costs back.
Yeah.
I want to say what we're used to, but so that it's not such a big bite out of everything we sell, everything every order that we take.
Yeah. I think the world has probably changed, Ross. I think people, particularly, and I'm only speaking from my experience in my industry with my colleagues and all that kind of stuff, but my company has figured out that it is viable to have a distributed workforce. They are okay with us working from home the majority of the time, and so I think that will likely stay that way. And people have figured out that it's okay to buy things and have them delivered. So they're going to keep doing that. And so the current loads on the transportation systems, I think, won't drop by all that much. Even once the current pandemic's gone, I think.
Right, the convenience is just too great.
Yeah.
Amazon just has too much stuff. It's too easy to
Yeah, but
browse for 5 minutes and it'll show up on your door the next day.
yeah, but everybody's been forced to follow Amazon. Amazon, it's a pretty successful model. I mean, you don't need to look at Jeff Bezos' bank account to understand that. But the whole COVID pandemic is forcing people to follow suit because they literally can't get people in the door of a brick and mortar store because, I mean, in Victoria's case, they haven't been allowed to for months. So the businesses have either gone under or they've shifted to an online model. And there are plenty of businesses that have been hybrid for quite some time, but the hybrid now is definitely leaning far more towards the online side than the physical brick and mortar side. Yeah.
Agreed. And for those who can achieve those economies of scale and can eat the shipping costs, great, more power to them. For those of us that can't, it's a big factor.
Yeah, but I think where I'm going with this is that the transportation infrastructure will get better because it needs to be able to support this, and so the shipping rates will eventually come back down. Whether there's more ships or more planes or there needs to be more capacity in that system.
No question about that.
Yeah.
And you're right that it will take some time for capital to go where it's needed. But for us, to sell a $30 or a $40 book and have to pay $10 of shipping.
Yeah, that's just outrageous. Yeah, you can't sustain that kind of, because you try and pass that on to the consumer, and the consumer's going to go, well, now all of a sudden that book is $60. I'm not buying it.
Well, we have faced that for some of our European customers, especially EU customers,
yeah.
forego the physical book in favor of a PDF because it is, shipping to Europe from the U.S. Used to be, 2 years ago, you could stuff a box of, a flat rate box with as many books, however heavy you wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
It costs $30 to ship from U.S. to EU. Now, that same box costs over $80, and the end customer may or may not get hit with a VAT or a duty.
Oh, yeah. And let's not go near the Brexit silliness, but
and this is just on EU.
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good point. You make a really good point. Some things will become luxury or collector's items, like physical books.
Well, and again, you're a prime example of the way things are likely to go with the equipment you've got in your workspace. From the printer to the laser cutter to the whatever it is you're going to get next.
We're a long way still from consumer level 3D printing.
But the setup that the test setup for the videos that we want to take in the future. You said that you printed some of the pieces you needed, clamps, to achieve the setup that you wanted.
Yep. And for me, with the equipment that I've got, that was a relatively simple thing. But if, the measure is of whether or not a piece of equipment is domestically acceptable or not is that could I give that item to my mother and have her produce something meaningful out of it? And the answer is categorically no. Right.
Can she use the microwave?
Absolutely.
Well, good for her. Can she use her smartphone?
Maybe we shouldn't go into that conversation.
That's where my mom fails.
Yeah, right. So I might rage at Apple a little bit here for a minute. Forgive me, but I got her an iPad because I believed the hype about the fact that they're incredibly easy to use. Anybody can just use an iPad. Bullshit. They're actually significantly more difficult to deal with in certain circumstances than their Android equivalents. And because you're in a locked ecosystem, there's nothing you can do about it. And the absolute ultimate fail on my part was the fact that I don't own one. And therefore, I'm attempting to remote support something I can't see and have no idea how it operates. So what I should have done was get her an Android so that I could have stepped through it on the phone with one in front of me so that I could see what I'm doing, if you know what I mean, in quotes. But anyhow, I was down there on the weekend, and when she was loading Facebook on this tablet, it was just a black screen. Just a blank black screen. I'm like, what on earth? So I did a password reset. Didn't make any difference. You know, killed the app off, restarted it, didn't make any difference. So I actually uninstalled it. Reinstalled it, logged her back in, and everything was peachy. But I'm like, okay, people, technically non-literate don't get this. The software still isn't good enough to perform this function, you know. If the TV goes wrong, you turn the TV off with a remote, you turn it back on with a remote, everything's fine. Software needs to be that good. You need to be able to do that kind of stuff, and it just isn't. And so, you know, your mum's not coping with her smartphone. That's because the software on her smartphone's not good enough yet.
Yeah, and that's where we stop the conversation about the capabilities of our parents. But I can see it. I can see it in myself. You know, the way my daughters use their hardware is vastly different than the way I use it.
Yep.
And I have no desire to learn how they use their apps. I'm just much more comfortable using it the way I've always used it. That kind of thing. I can see that break happening.
Yep. My son was quite capable, from the age of about 3, of turning the computer on, loading the CD that he wanted with a game on it that he wanted to play, starting the software and playing the game. From the age of about 3.
Mm-hmm.
The things he can do with phones and tablets and computer software and all that kind of stuff now, as an 18-year-old, I can't conceive of. And
it's your profession.
It's my profession, exactly right. And so I'm right with you. So I'm a little bit set in my ways as about how I use this kind of stuff.
And unfortunately, I have to say that look at what you're doing right now.
Yeah. I'm smearing pigment onto brilliant metal models, but you're talking about the whole streaming thing.
No, I'm talking about you're choosing to spend some of your valuable leisure time doing something that somebody 100, 150 years ago did.
Yeah.
We're all equally guilty of that.
Yeah.
But, how many of our children find satisfaction and pleasure in doing that same thing? Not as many as we would like.
Not as many as we would like. What's hilarious is that apparently 2 of my children this year have converted over to miniature painters from board game players, and I'm just there's a part of me which is I'm thrilled to the core that they find something that I do interesting at all, and there's another part of me which is mortified because inevitably they're going to be significantly better at it than I am.
Well, then you just have to be a proud parent. That's both ways, either way.
Yes, it's all about perspective. My kids grew up as gamers. Like we always had a Nintendo in the house, and it was always on. Their mother and I, we played Nintendo every evening, well and truly over and above watching any kind of television. And so these kids grew up as gamers. When my daughter was over a couple of years ago, she brought her Switch with her, and we sat down and we played Mario Kart for a significant number of hours. Now, when we were all still together as a family unit and living at home, I was untouchable on Mario Kart. Simply untouchable. And boy, oh boy, did she hand my ass to me. I didn't win a single race. And so I fully expect that in her life she will surpass everything I've done. And as you say, proud parent.
Yep.
She's going to go a long way, I think. I hope. Actually, there's only one thing I really hope for her, and that is just that she's happy.
That's all we, as much as we would like to guide their careers, as long as they're happy, nothing else matters. Absolutely.
Yeah. Didn't put any pressure on her to be anything in particular. She decided that she wanted to go down the engineering path, and she went down the engineering path and decided she hated that and switched again. And I'm like, sweetie, at least you've learned something that you don't like. In time before you've made a career out of it and made yourself miserable for 40 years. So, yeah. Oh, this one's brand new.
What's that?
What's what?
I might have to go outside and check. A big truck just drove by. Might be my neighbor delivering another load of dirt.
Oh, to you?
To me, yes.
Right.
Again, my neighbor is a general contractor who specializes in excavations and below ground stuff.
Right.
And he's one of these guys who you love to have as a neighbor because he's a firm believer in having the proper tools for any given task.
Right.
And he has the wherewithal to have all kinds of really cool, big tools. And, in the house remodel here and work done around the house, I've gotten to drive some of them and use them. It's good, clean fun.
Yeah.
But the prices that he has been charged to move dirt that he's dug out for a basement, say, or,
Yep.
to put in a sewer line or whatever, the cost he has to pay to dump that dirt somewhere has gone up, by 10 times, 5 times, 10 times in the last 2 years.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why?
Because maybe it has some bricks or some pieces of asphalt or concrete in it. It's not clean dirt. So the company that takes clean dirt or that sells clean dirt would have to sift it. Stuff,
yeah, right.
So on and so forth.
Yeah.
So, of course, I have enough land and uses for it to say, okay, if you ever have any extra dirt that that it's more convenient to dump it on my land so I can use it. By all means, go ahead.
So there you go. I'll tell you the story about how I ended up as a diesel mechanic too one day, if you like.
I had classes in it.
You had classes in it. I just did it. My kids ended up at the same school for some time, as the kids of a guy who runs an earth-moving servicing and mechanical repairs business. And I ended up helping him out over one Christmas because he needed an extra pair of hands to do a job he couldn't do on his own, and he didn't have anybody else to do it, so I volunteered, and I stayed working for him for a few years, learning how to do diesel mechanic work on earth-moving equipment. Which, you like using the phrase "good, clean fun." It was good, clean fun for interesting definitions of the word clean.
No, when you can take a college class and one of your assignments is to, I guess it was a two-cylinder, I guess.
Right. What was it, a Deutz?
And you had to take it apart, and you had to put it back together again and get it to run.
And they had to work at the end of it. That's the most important part. Yeah, right.
Yep. And the only real thing was, putting the camshaft in to make sure it was
timed properly. Yeah, that's right. Well, we did that, but we did it with 24-litre 6-cylinders.
One of the most, one of the games I'm playing on my iPad right now is a train game.
Oh yeah.
And in my college career, I got to take a tour of the electromotive division plant outside Chicago.
Yeah.
Ostensibly, I went there to witness the certification test of a big diesel engine that was going to go on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to walk the floor where they, have equipments that pick up locomotives and turn them over and roll them and take them from one side of the plant to the other.
Yeah.
It was great. It's one of these legendary places that you hear about. And then, of course, from that point on, you become a train spotter and say, oh, yeah, I saw the plant where that one was made.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm a train spotter from way, way, way back. But yeah, I've read about that particular plant and what they can do there and how you can put together an assembly line for, 120-ton locomotives and how you move that stuff around the assembly line and how it all comes together and gets plugged in and turned on and then shipped off, and amazing stuff. The scale involved in American railroading is just something else. The machinery involved. You obviously know what a big boy is. Obviously, the machine to mill the frames of a big boy was capable of milling them stacked 3 high. And you stop and you think about that for a minute. Those things are 132 feet? Drawbar to drawbar?
Yeah, no, my school internship was with the American Bureau of Shipping.
Yeah.
So I walked around with the head of the Chicago branch, and he had, the ABS stick that he would go in and pound into the metal.
Right.
So we went to EMD. We went to some of these forge places.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, stamp stuff out.
Yeah.
We didn't. I'm sure if I asked, or if I was there for longer than just the 2 weeks I was there, we could have gotten into some of the steel mills. But it's stuff that we've read about, stuff we've seen pictures of. To actually stand on the floor and witness it.
Yeah.
Different experience altogether.
Oh yeah. And the noise. I can't imagine the noise.
Yeah, it's just a din.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by all of that stuff. The industry involved in putting together a ship. Like, you've seen the shipyards in Korea, the way they build modern container ships and stuff like that. How these things grow down the slipway. There's a building at the top of the slipway.
Well,
And they assemble a piece in the building, weld it to the hull as it exists, and then push the whole thing down the slipway. So it's this ships sort of grow out of this building.
I live, half a mile away from the shores of the Columbia River.
Right.
In Portland. And one of the sources of wealth and claims to fame for this area was the shipbuilding during World War II.
Yep.
They were squirting out a ship a day.
Yep.
And, we see the pictures of all the container ships lined up out of outside Long Beach, Los Angeles Harbor.
Yeah.
And I've gone to school for learning part of that logistics chain, and it's amazing how brilliantly it works when everything is going properly.
Yeah.
How easy it is to break it. And
yeah.
the far-reaching ramifications of it's almost butterfly effect kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the flow one. You remember probably 20 years ago now, Union Pacific had a meltdown. I think they'd acquired Southern Pacific, or one of those, and their whole traffic network broke down, so they just ended up in complete gridlock. Do you remember that?
I seem to remember something like that. Yeah, there
Yeah.
was all kinds of, you broke it. Let's have the government go in and try and run it and fix it. And of course,
Well, that isn't going to work.
that's prevailed.
Yeah, that isn't going to work. But yeah, that's exactly what you're talking about. It's just like, you get this cascading failure. One little thing leads to another little thing, leads to another little thing, and all of a sudden it's meltdown.
Well, it's like you said, the cost per parcel to ship will eventually, hopefully, go down. But we have some rough patches to get through to
Yeah,
get there.
I just think you're going to end up with a significant amount more capacity in that. I think the world's just going to start shipping more stuff around. Because I don't know that it's going to go back to the way that it was before. I'm quite comfortable now buying stuff online and having it delivered. I actually prefer that than going down to a bricks and mortar store.
So, are there any things that you still want to touch before you buy it?
Clothes. But
It's too easy to return them if they don't fit.
yeah.
You don't like it.
Well, I mean, so this is the thing. Like, if you do buy them, there are certain things that if you do buy them from a company like Amazon, they do accept returns, and they make it pretty easy. And so, as soon as I said the word clothes, I'm like, yeah, but you can actually send them back. So, well, that's...
I don't know. Do you realize how easy it is to send them back here? I mean,
No.
You can Amazon order and take it. If you don't like it, you take it to a UPS store and dump it on them, and they will do everything else for you.
Yeah, that's... I think my partner sent something back to Amazon a couple of weeks ago, and I think all she had to do was print out a label, stick it on the packaging, and...
Here, you don't even have to do that.
You're right. You just say, I'm returning it, hand it off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to show the order so that they can scan a barcode.
Right,
That's it.
right, yeah. So there you go. The only things I've been to brick and mortar for recently was a new set of prescription glasses and some shoes. otherwise, absolutely everything else I've bought in the last 12 months has been online.
I don't know, and of course, I think you're more like me in that we're not exactly. Well, I know what you spend your money on. But
Yeah.
we're not going out and, I drive the car when groceries are purchased. I
Yep.
pay the bills when everything else gets ordered. When my stuff gets too raggedy for Carol to object to, well, then we place another order online for this stuff that I like to wear.
That's it. I'll have 3 pairs of black jeans in this size. I'll have 4 pairs of tracksuit pants in black in this size. I've sort of broken my black t-shirt rule a few times recently, but otherwise it's black t-shirts in this size, and that's it. I'm not a clothes source, not by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not interested in thinking about clothes. There are too many other more things that are more interesting to me to think about. Like, how do I get this building onto that flat sheet so that I can cut it 100 times?
I was going to suggest that.
Well, I went for a... What would it be for you? Let's say 7-mile walk yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of which was, how do I design this? How do I design that? How do I design the other?
Are great contemplation times, no question about that.
Yep. Had Chester Bennington screaming at me from my headphones, and I was just thinking about where are we going with those building models. So yeah, that. Have you ever seen? There's a bunch of memes, like the internet is for memes. There's a meme about this woman wondering why her partner's not speaking, and she's going through all of this litany of, oh, he must be about to break up with me. He
Which right, and he has probably a very simple.
Yeah, and the meme boils down to, in this case, motorcycle won't start. Can't figure out why. and that's it. It's like my partner looks at me sometimes and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" She got this expression on your face. What expression? I'm not sure. You're not in the room. Oh, yeah, okay. Trying to figure out a problem.
I've been taken to sighing lately.
Yeah.
And every time I do so, my wife thinks it's the end of the world. Something must be tragically wrong. And it's just, oh, gee whiz. It's going to be a challenge to get the next Kickstarter campaign launched on time.
How do I motivate these people to finish that thing so that we can do this thing on that date, which allows this other thing to happen on this other date? And I have no idea how you can possibly keep all of that stuff straight in your head. Too many disparate groups of people trying to do too many different things on the same timeline. That's like the very definition of herding cats.
There was a sigh.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that's why I put out that email earlier this week. Started to try and show people how these things are contingent upon the other.
And did you get any kind of feedback from that?
From you.
Right.
After I reminded you that I sent it.
Yeah. I really need to put Outlook in my startup on that computer, because every time I reboot that computer, the app doesn't restart, and so I don't get those emails. or I need to put a forward on them, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was the other question I was going to ask. How on earth do you deal with the 25 different email addresses you appear to have?
It's Outlook. It's try to institute the rules, and hopefully it all goes into the right place so I can see we've got the latest new thing.
Right. So
It's not so much the different emails as the 10% of the several hundred emails that I get a day that are actually important.
so that's the filtering of them.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I have a lot of inbox filters on my work email to route that kind of stuff. I get a lot of automated stuff from systems. So they institute systems to say, oh, when this thing happens, we'll send you an email. And after you've got the fourth or fifth hundred email from that particular system on that particular day, you're just like, this is just drowning my inbox. I'm going to institute a rule that it goes straight to a folder and skips my inbox, in which case you've completely defeated the purpose of the notification mechanism. But that concept appears to not be understood by some people.
Well, I've listened to your travails
Yep.
from real life, so yes, I understand.
Yeah.
And,
You must get an immense amount of spam.
Yes and no. My stuff that's so obviously spam gets cut off by the ISP.
Yeah. But
Even the FASA game stuff, some of that stuff gets thrown out immediately. But I think I get 2 or 3 emails a day from somebody who describes himself as, let's see where it is, a nutritionist who wants to sell herbal supplements,
right.
or wants us to buy them from him and sell them on. But I think I get 3 or 4 from him a day. Exact same email, exact same, and unfortunately I get copied from everything from contact or info@fasagames.com.
Yeah, right.
So it adds up.
Yeah. So you spend an hour just wrangling email a day, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends what's going on and what else is going on. That's one of the things that having Andy out of email or having her not online is crippling, since I've taken over doing some of the things that she used to do for us.
Yeah. Did we get a resolution of that, or is that saga still going?
It's ongoing. Next milestone is the 13th.
Good grief.
But they're starting to give her things because of the time it has taken to get her hooked up.
Right. But what she actually wants is an internet connection, not freebies.
Yep.
That's hilariously bad. I'll have, by the time she's back in the loop and we've sorted this out so that I'm uploading these things, I'll have 14 or 15 of these videos. And when you consider that, that's one a week. It's not like I'm producing them faster than that. So that'll be 14 or 15 weeks she's been unable to help this part of the process. I mean, that's a significant gap.
I think she moved into her new place on June 30th.
Yeah.
And has been started before then to try and make sure that everything was set up so that when they moved in, she could, have no interruption.
Mm.
But as we know, that has failed miserably.
Mm-hmm. So that is, well, it's not going to be far off 4 months. And a 4-month interruption in your life, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yep.
So they better be pretty good freebies.
Well, as you said earlier, never good enough.
No, never. So, should I reach out to Paul or just wait for him?
Well, I will, I'll talk to him on Wednesday. I know there are things that you two need to talk about together.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely up to you. I will pass along your fact that you would look forward to painting some dwarves.
Yep.
And I will probably encourage him to think about, okay, what happens after dwarves, so we can get you started on that now.
Right.
So that by the time we're ready for it, it might all actually be done.
Be done. Yep. I'm looking forward to getting an answer out of the factory too, as to where we're going with that.
I hope that come my Monday morning, I'll have information from him.
Because that obviously determines the short-term goals. If they're okay with everything and we can sort that out so that the mold cost is reasonable and we've got the right number of items and all that kind of stuff with the designs as they currently are, then it means that I'm free to focus on wooden walls.
Yep.
And Demonworld. Having Leanne gone from Demonworld means I need to rethink some things, I think.
Well, in one respect, it makes the concentration on the miniatures game
Easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. She has promised to finish a document for me, but we didn't put a time frame on finishing that document, so there's no pressure on her. I know she's struggling a little bit in life at the moment, so I wasn't putting any pressure on anyway.
Yep.
Not that I've had the bandwidth or the capacity to put pressure on as far as Demonworld is concerned, because, oh boy.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking about, in my mind, when I said February, March, April, of course I'm thinking February 1st.
Yeah. How many buildings?
Well, it's just 3, right? The small castle.
I deserved that. There was an audible thunk as I walked into that. Slapstick comedy is alive and well. It's just 3. Yes.
All of us are eager to see what it's going to look like once you start to put together the large one. Just to see how much real estate it encompasses and how the units, that's almost big enough to have a battle inside the courtyard, inside the walls.
It will be. I guarantee it. I have enough cut and made up now just of the low wall sections that I could put an extensive fortification together in a 6x4 space. So with the higher walls, I had a proposition for you. So these bigger towers, how about I put them together so that they are sectional, so that you can have a low tower and you can buy another one of these pieces and it'll stack, so that you can take the low tower and you can produce a medium tower. And then if you want a tall tower, you buy another piece and it stacks, and then you have a piece that goes on top to form the crenellations and the top base and everything like that. But that could go on the top of any of them, because it'll work.
So the base dimensions.
Yep.
the footprint are the same on level 1 as they are on the top level, however many levels you want to put on.
Yeah, right. And the keying mechanism to get them to stay together when they stack will be the same. So
At each level, can we have a ring where we can put a single stand of figures?
yeah, so you should be able to lift them off, and so that if you want a multi-level fight going on, you can take sections of the tower off and you can move miniatures around on the space. Maybe I need to draw it to illustrate it, but
Yeah, no, I think the question is, that in the connection between level 1 and level 2, is there
a platform
walkway around the tower that you can put a figure?
No, but I could produce a walkway around the tower which would sit on that because of the nature of the way they would stack, because that keying would be a universal sort of thing. Then you could produce accessories to produce a walkway
So
to go around.
You could have a slim one, you could have as many levels as you wanted, however you wanted to put it together.
Yep.
That seems to make eminent sense.
Yeah, and do that for the square, the hexagonal, and the octagonal. So then we're cutting the same sheet, but if you want a tall tower, you need 4 of the sheets. If you want a small tower, you only need 2 of them. Right? That sort of thing. That seems reasonable.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And that way, do the same sort of thing with keeps. Have the shape of the floor area the same, but you can swap in different bits if you wanted. So you could have one tower doesn't necessarily have to be the same as the other, but the difference is between the composition of the parts, not.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the keep. That's an opportunity for us to be a lot more decorative.
Yeah. That was a given, but like you could have a keep that is a military keep with military style windows and that sort of stuff, and then you could have a decorative one which has got a lot of open windows and walkways and stuff like that. But they're both the same footprint, so that they could both go on the same base. So you could have the entryway as a.
Or even plunk them on top of each other if that's.
Yep. So you could have the decorative one on top of the military one, because apparently the king lives on the top floor, that type of stuff, that sort of idea. So rather than having them individually distinct buildings, we have them as a composable set of parts that allows people to put together whatever they want.
Sounds like a plan.
That was about 5 miles of that walk yesterday, thinking about that.
Well, it's sometimes amazing when dealing with just stock numbers and making the fewest number of unique parts so that you can put them together in as many different ways as possible.
Yeah. We're still going to end up with hundreds of part numbers, though.
I know.
Like, stables and barracks and water wells and feed stores and.
Well, here's another thing that you're going to want to ponder in your next walk,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a piece of software that you input 3 large castles, and it will squirt out your cutting list.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how big our footprint is on our commercial machine, tailored to that raw stock size.
That is a very interesting problem indeed. Because it might even be possible to put together a piece of software that actually does a composite job on the design files themselves. So it would spit out a set of design files that says here's the most efficient way to cut this order. Now see, now my brain's going.
And my task is done. But yeah, that would make.
The problem is I can't do it all. I'm going to have to find somebody else to help.
But that makes RPE's job immeasurably easier. And if we have to set up a machine here in the U.S., it makes running that operation.
Have you got a building you could set one up in?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
The problem is, well, it just depends on how. If you can fit it all into a 9x12 envelope, that's really easy and cheap to ship from one corner of the country.
So these.
You've got a foot-high stack of A4s.
Yeah, that's not. That's a box.
Yep. That, so again, depending on, I'll have to check the. U.S. Postal Service has a flat rate box that you can, again, put whatever you want inside of it, as long as it doesn't weigh more than 70 pounds. The price is always the same no matter where you ship it.
Right.
Don't know that they fit an A4, but we'll check that.
So to be clear, the stuff that I'm cutting at the moment is 300 by 200. It's actually 290 by 200, which is
just under.
It's quite well. It's actually quite a bit under A4 at this point.
This is how bad it's gotten. One of my browser windows that is always open is my paper size.
Yeah. Conversions.
Yep.
Yeah. Wrong browser window or wrong browser?
I haven't gotten that bad yet.
Yeah, I've accidentally started Microsoft Edge. Wrong browser.
Now it's become pointless because I have too many tabs on.
Yeah, right. We always joke at work that when Microsoft shipped Edge, the default page for Edge should be the download page for Chrome.
Well, as an Edge user, for some reason I just never, there it is, my paper size is chart. Yeah, so A4 is 297 by 210.
Yep. So these are 290 by 200. It's effectively the cutting area. There's all kinds of mechanical reasons for that in my particular cutter, and the way I managed to put together because I've got I don't know what you would call it. It's an arrangement for being able to grip the edges of the sheet to hold it while it's being cut, but it has aluminium fly wire underneath it to catch pieces so they don't drop into the bottom of the cutter.
Okay, so you basically have a gripper to hold the piece in place.
Yeah, and a catch net.
Underneath.
Yeah. Mind you, that mesh needs replacing now because even the laser cutter will cut metal if you run the laser over it often enough, and there are some parts of that mesh that are just missing now because they've been cut out. I mean, it's done a lot of work, that machine, actually. Like I said, 30 of those double-story Normandy buildings. None of which are painted, I might add.
That becomes a whole nother.
Yep. Because they're all going to have to be painted for display for the Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, we're gonna want to show both. This is what you get, and this is what it could be.
Mm-hmm. I'll send some to Maddie. He can paint some.
And we'll take silence as agreement.
Yep, absolutely.
That's how I became Santa Claus for the work Christmas party.
Right. Because silence was agreement.
Apparently.
You sound the part.
It's more because I'm big, fat, and have a beard.
There you go. I bet the beard's the wrong colour.
It is.
You missed a perfect opportunity, Maddie, there. You should have said something about jolly.
No one who truly knows me would ever describe me as jolly.
Right. So, you've got a choice, Ross, I guess. About whether you get an A4 size one just to experiment with it like I am, or you actually get an industrial one.
Well, the first one that will be purchased in the UK will be the industrial one.
Mm-hmm. Then there's going to be a whole bunch of backwards and forwards because the stuff that I'm doing that works for me may not necessarily work for that. So there'll need to be an adjustment period, I suppose.
Well, and you know, and we're, as we all well know, we're chicken and egg.
Yeah.
To me, the biggest thing is how big of our cutting bed will be.
Yeah. You've obviously been doing a fair bit of research. What sort of sizes do they range?
I mean, it just depends on how much you want to pay.
Okay, within the budget range that we were talking about, not sort of anything more than that.
The problem is, or the question is, the ready stock over there is essentially 4 feet by 8 foot
Mm-hmm.
in the
That's normal.
wholesale lumber market.
24 by 1200. That's the absolute standard panel size.
And you know, there are machines that will take one of those.
Right, but not in that price range.
It's, you know, you've several issues. Do you want the cutting enclosure completely closed so that you can treat the air pollution appropriate?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it just a flat bed with a open, you know, two-step arm that's controlling the laser head? And then you have to control the environment in the whole space that the machine is in.
Let me tell you, you don't want to do the latter.
Well, unless you had a room dedicated to just that, and that's the way it goes.
But being in that room at any period of time while that machine was running would require significant PPE.
Again, capital investment. There's air transfer systems that will take care of that stuff really efficiently.
Uh-huh. But
But
you said efficiently, not cheaply.
yeah. Then all of the enclosure ones, probably looking at half that standard size.
Right.
Is the largest that you would probably do comfortably. Sometimes they'll be longer and skinnier than cutting that in half. You know, the 4 by 8 in half to get a 4 by 4 or 1200 by 1200.
Right.
So that's the, that's the probably where the trade-off is going to be.
Yep.
How many cuts do we need our raw goods supplier to make on that 4x8 sheet to get it down to where we don't have to do that cut in our shop, because dealing with the air pollution is enough rather than having to deal with sawdust also.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we're cutting a 3 or a 3.6 inch sheet.
So the stuff that I had delivered last week was 2x4, so 1200 by 600. That is now a lot of stacks of 290 by 200. And a lot of sawdust.
Were you cutting? How many would you cut at a time?
Just one.
And table saw? Or
Yeah, table saw, but just one at a time, because I'm not that good with that table saw, and I made enough mistakes as it was.
Yeah, I know. Cutting that 8-foot length in half is a real pain in the ass. Without the proper setup.
Yeah, you need the guides and the outrigger and all that stuff.
Yep. And you would probably, there's these really cool, you instead of laying the sheet flat, you lay it up at an angle. Saws on a track, and you just drop the saw, and that's your cut.
Yep.
But as I'm talking to Paul about this, they still got sawdust left over from the previous occupant, which was, more than 10 years ago now. Once it got in, it just never goes away.
Yeah, it's impossible to get rid of. But they'd have their own problems though, right? They'd have talcum powder on everything.
We have the casting room.
Yep.
And then the stock room, and then the entrance into the rest of the warehouse. We have the flexible wall between the workroom and the rest of the warehouse.
Mm.
And it's, it is noticeable in the workroom, but it's not noticeable at all in the rest of the warehouse. So, we have, almost, at least let's call it one true 90-degree turn for the dust to go out, so it doesn't travel that much.
Right.
So it's pretty well contained within our own working space. And because of its pervasiveness, people have gotten light with the talc sock also. So again, we've learned to manage it.
Yeah.
Our biggest problem is that it's a 100-year-old building. It used to be a tobacco warehouse, or was built to be a tobacco warehouse. So it has these, and it was built in 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got these really thick brick, stone, concrete walls,
Mm-hmm.
and it has a 14-foot high ceiling in the space we're in. So heating it, temperature control is a real issue, especially in the wintertime. It can get really cold in there.
Yeah. It's the UK, right? I can't imagine it gets really hot.
And, it's, once you're in the middle of the winter and the whole building has cooled down, and it'll take a month for it to cool off.
Uh-huh. But then it's cold.
Yep, and it's that nice damp cold, too.
Oof.
Lots of space heaters, lots of that sort of thing. That may be one of our biggest issues, I think. Something I was reading, and maybe it's the laser or something having to do with this project. really want it to be within a fairly narrow range of temperature to
Right.
operate as designed.
So my laser is water cooled.
That's what it was. The water.
So I can imagine that the water would need to be within a certain range. Like you wouldn't be allowed to let it freeze for very good reasons.
That's not going to happen. But I think it wanted to be above. It had to be warmer than 40 or 45 degrees.
Yeah.
10 or 15.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. But the ability to regulate water temperature, that's a reasonably well solved problem.
It's just a startup problem.
Yep.
The water coolers that I've seen are basically self-contained units that you're going to feed distilled water into when it evaporates out to normal use. And but getting it up to an adequate starting temperature after being in the building overnight, that might be somewhat of a challenge.
I think you've missed the point. I think the cutter's going to have to run all night. So
I don't think we could possibly let it run on without a person nearby.
No, absolutely not.
And there's no way the building owner will let us put somebody in overnight.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That might be an insurance thing.
Yep. No, I mean it's a fortress. And it has been broken into once. And the alarms went, the audible alarms went off, so they scampered, but they wrecked one of the mechanical doors.
Yep. And what sort of cutting speeds were they looking at on these? Again, probably they start at a certain range, and you add dollars, and they go up, I guess.
Yeah, and well, it's also a factor of the what you're running into is, you want to have a sacrificial layer there that, that's going to get destroyed over time by burn throughs, by cut throughs.
Mm-hmm.
But they were looking at, it's 8 to 50 millimeters per second for through cuts.
Right.
Stuff, and it again completely driven by price.
That's the one problem that I have with the stock that I've just bought and the cutter that I've got, is that it doesn't cut cleanly on a single pass. Even at 8 millimeters a second, I typically have to do 2 passes. And even then I don't necessarily get proper through cut across the entire sheet. Because of the way the laser is directed around the interior of the machine through mirrors and a focal point, if
you don't have as sharp a focus as
yeah, it wanders by the adjustment of the mirrors, and it's actually a very tricky thing to get it properly balanced across. And so I just put up with that, and when I'm pulling the pieces out of the sprue, obviously I've got to do some fix-ups from time to time, some filing, some cutting, that sort of stuff. I figure that's fine for prototypes, but for the final finished product going out into the marketplace, that stuff's all going to have to be right.
Yep.
And that's why I'm saying that really we should be focused on getting a machine that has the laser in the cutting head, so you don't have those adjustment problems.
Oh, absolutely. All the things we're looking at are that way.
Yeah.
And they've got stepper motors controlling the XY, sometimes Z.
Yep.
And you have the water lines going
to the head.
Keep it head.
Yeah.
Cool.
They'll have to have air assist too, probably.
Oh, that's goes back to the enclosure versus not.
Yeah, but on mine I've got an airline that goes to the laser head, to the actual cutting head, that blows the flame out. No, it's the flame out.
Yeah, these talk about the debris.
Right, okay, that too. But like on the ply that I'm cutting, if you don't have the air assist on it, you actually get quite a substantial fire, and you end up with more material burnt than you want.
I wonder if, because these are able to probably, certainly, in my mind, are able to focus narrower and run quicker, so that probably becomes less of an issue, perhaps.
Yeah, that's not my experience, but you could be right.
I don't know. I mean, none of the literature I've seen has talked about it in that way.
Right. Interesting. But it is the difference in quality of the cut pre-air assist to when I put the air assist in is dramatic. After putting the air assist in, the quality of the cut went up 1,000 times. So that might actually just be built in. They don't even talk about it. It might just be built in.
Yeah, no, I know I've read that and understood why it was there, and understood why that enclosure then needs to be evacuated, because a lot of stuff is going to be floating around in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the distance between the tip of the laser and the material is very small.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Tell you a funny story. I was cutting some propellers for some Crimson Skies models, and I didn't put the tab on the cut, so once they were cut from the material, they were free. Ostensibly to drop onto the mesh below. Ostensibly.
They're light enough so that
So the air assist gave them a kick and flicked them into the air, and then the evacuation system picked them up and threw them out the back wall of the garage. So, yeah, I'm going to have to go and get all of those. Pretty sure I didn't get all of them. But, yeah. The things you learn. So,
testing and trial and error is a thing.
Yeah, so, in the immortal words of Jeremy Clarkson, that's not gone well. Good fun. So, lots and lots and lots to think about. And Paul actually wants to do some design.
Oh, absolutely.
I got that right, yeah?
He's been tinkering as he's had time. As I told you, he's done some generic sci-fi buildings for resin.
Right, yeah.
Just using online tools. You input your design, and they'll send you a printed version for you.
Right, yep.
Kind of thing.
SolidWorks, that sort of stuff. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So.
Well, that'll be cool.
Yeah, like I said, you two need to converse when you have the chance anyway, just to talk about that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. I need to hassle him about a couple of things, like resin devulcanization. We really need to get onto that.
That's one or two on his list.
And then decals. To hassle him about those as well. I've always wanted to buy a decal printer, but they're hideously expensive, and the ink's almost in the realm of unobtainium. So I just don't know how people do it commercially.
I know that we looked into this when we first got the Demonworld stuff, and it was just, we would be printing a multiple lifetime supply at some of these other folks' minimum orders.
Yeah, right.
I just wish everybody, well.
So that's another thing.
The robot painter for logos and stuff.
Yeah. It's another one of those things. I think decals makes more sense as a print-on-demand thing. But you've got to have enough range, enough variety to make that worthwhile. Like, you can't just have an expensive piece of equipment sitting there doing nothing.
Again, if we were making mechs, we would know what we have and what the market is, and we could make that investment choice. We don't have anything like that at the moment, so it just puts it out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah. And those guys that do print those decals for mechs haven't entered the modern age yet. They don't have a self-service portal that enables purchasing of those particular items to be particularly easy. Missed opportunity, I think. I still think it's one guy that's operating a printer out of his garage. So
Hardly possible.
yeah. Well, look at me, one guy operating a laser cutter out of his garage. I did have a conversation with the neighbours about that, saying, hey, if this starts to getting obnoxious, let me know and I'll do something about it.
But you can still make a fairly valid argument that it's for personal consumption. You're 28, did you say? Multi-story?
30!
30?
But I cut all of those when we were up in the country, and in that particular area nobody batted an eye at wood smoke ever, because we had our primary source of heating was a wood fire, so we had wood fires burning all the time. But now I'm absolutely smack in the middle of suburbia, so blue wood smoke arising from somebody's house tends to generate some alarm. But I did put a carbon filter on the exhaust outlet of it. It's just not as effective as I would like it to be. So I'll need to redesign that.
Furnace filter or something like that is probably
Yeah, well, this has got a whole bunch of activated charcoal in it, just to get the toxins out of the air. Particularly when you're doing things like cutting acrylic. Oh boy, that's nasty stuff.
I don't know, the videos make it look so easy. But they do have the hood down when it's being cut.
Yeah, there should be a bunch of safety interlocks. Because if it's a CO2 laser, they're invisible. At least the one that I've got's invisible. So you can lose your eyesight instantly. And not know what caused it. So yeah, the safety interlock is a pretty important sort of a thing.
Well, my conversation with Paul on Wednesday is going to be fairly interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
From the range of topics we've been talking about today, or other stuff as well?
Just that.
Just that. Does he know how much he's bitten off? Yet?
No, I don't know that he's looked at the spreadsheet yet.
Right. I haven't finished transposing all that stuff yet either. Sorry.
It's not like you have nothing else to do.
I do need to sleep occasionally. I spent some in quotes quality time last night, and we watched Black Widow.
Now that it's on Disney.
Well, yeah, and free, because we're paying for Disney. I don't want to pay twice.
No, we watched Skyfall last night in anticipation of watching.
Oh, the next one, yeah.
It was supposed to be Spectre tonight, and then the new movie on Saturday.
Yeah.
But turns out they're closing one of the major expressways in both directions for the whole weekend to install a one-piece pedestrian bicycle bridge over the expressway.
Right.
So, again, a great project to witness, but going to make travel in Portland almost impossible this weekend.
Right. So no going to the cinema for you.
Well, the plan was to go to the noodle place with my daughter and her boyfriend
Mm.
on the other side of town. Just having to go through this bottleneck.
Yeah.
And then going to the cinema after that. So yeah, no, we'll delay it a week because of this. Plus, you know, the baseball playoffs are in full swing now here. And
Right.
there will be nothing but baseball for all the month of October between now and the World Series. So, as long as the wife is a fan of the Dodgers, I, of course, a White Sox fan from way back.
Yeah.
And both are in, and both could potentially meet in the final series.
Oh, there could be some domestic tension.
But I guess the White Sox got shellacked yesterday. So there's 8 teams left.
Yep.
And a month to get all the games played.
Yeah, frenetic. So that means the TV in the house is on baseball most of the time.
Well, at least most of them, you know, because of TV, all of them are pretty much evening games.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not like, you know, World Cup group stage, that sort of thing, where you've got, you know, half a dozen games every day.
Yeah.
So,
But still, that's like it's a baseball game basically every night or every second night.
Yep.
In the evening, yeah. Good stuff. Well, I'm done, I think. Not that they're
let
done.
Maddie have a word in edgewise.
No, he's going to do a lot of talking tomorrow.
That's right. Cyberpunk
That's it.
weekend game, yes.
That's it. How you doing there, Matty?
Very well, thank you.
That's excellent. Well, thanks for joining, even if you're not talking. It's nice to have your company.
I just don't want to interrupt you.
I think I have successfully put off reconciling RPE accounts for another day.
For another day, you're going to have to get to it sometime.
Well, now that we're not going out to the movies tomorrow, I have the whole day.
Oh no, that's not a win.
But the sooner I get it done, the sooner I can forget about it. So.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Thank you very much for an excellent conversation. I hope everybody else enjoyed that as much as I did.
Righty, until next time.
Thanks, Ross. Thanks, Matty. Good stuff, guys.
Maddie.
See ya.
Bye-bye.